in 59 countries, as Fred Halliday used to say, Muslim countries, you can't say that this is not a heterogeneous community, not to mention the Muslims living abroad. But what does T2T come up with? The Deauville Summit. And the Deauville Summit has an agenda to bring small and medium enterprises into the region, post-haste. Now, of course, we express our appreciation on the one side because this initiative actually should have been taken from the wealthy countries in the region, in my view. The wealthy countries in the region have sovereign wealth funds of over $3 trillion, most of which are outside the region, many of which actually work with initiatives such as Islamic banking, Islamic reinsurance, Islamic foundations. And my concern is that nobody says Sharia there simply because these banks seem to be working well, even in the debt crisis. Nobody is criticizing Islamic banking. Why is that? Is it just because the money is in the bank, so to speak? Isn't it about time that these institutions started doing rather than talking about Islamic values in the context of the countries of the region and networking with Paul Volcker's suggestion to me years ago of an asymmetric development fund, maybe an Arab bank for reconstruction and development, not a European bank for reconstruction and development only, but a transition-to-transition initiative which can translate civil values into sustainable policies and practical policies for fighting the real cause of unrest in our region, and that is the inequalities, the ins and the outs, the haves and the have-nots. If you read Loretta Napoleoni's fascinating book recently on terror and the economy, we're told that 2/3 of the world's economy is in the field of the black economy. Money laundering, drug smuggling. And my fear is that if we look at the prospects of our region, that any initiative that allows this region to develop an authentic partnership with other regions of the world should be encouraged. Now, of course, I'm speaking regionally about regional commons, but in reality, we have Turkey, Iran, Israel, and the United States, who are strong countries, either in the region or with strong interest in the region. And we Arabs, as I say everywhere, I'm ashamed and sorry to say, don't need enemies because we're doing a damn good job of it ourselves. So unless and until some kind of institutional capacity is developed in the region, which is apolitical in a sense, but which promotes policies of change, I don't see how we can break out of the issue. I put it politely by saying the trust factor, the trust in leadership and so forth. Today, I think it has to be a trust in institutions, a trust in building self-reliance. I've been calling for supranational mechanisms to address transborder challenges for years, and particularly a water and energy community for the human environment. As I was saying to Yossi Beilin just a few months ago, I mean, when I say Yossi Beilin, Israelis say, well, he's no longer involved. I think we're all involved in matters of war and peace, and you know, those of us who are involved in Oslo and bilateral talks may have dust and ashes in our mouths at the present time, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't care. And he and many others, I won't say of the same persuasion because that's patronizing, judgmental, but many in the region, Israelis and Arabs, feel that activism for peace is essential in the context of a supranational development. You had water and energy, Monet and Schuman. Why can't we have water, forgive me, coal and steel? Why can't we have water and energy? Water and energy for the human environment means that we need a knowledge base for our region. Would you believe that our West Asian region does not have a knowledge base? There's what do they call it? Data, informatics, but no knowledge yet. So when we take the initiative of developing a Blue Peace project, which is now bound and circulated to those who are interested, followed by a call for a regional water council. I'm not saying avoid negotiations tomorrow with Israel, but the fact is that there's been this long-standing issue of putting the cart before the horse. Do you have bilateral negotiations and then multilateral talks, or do you have a multilateral approach which develops an environmental responsibility to both the human beings and, in this context, the uprooted are refugees, not only Palestinian, but Iraqi, Syrian, Libyan, if you will. Up to 1 million people went into southern Tunis. And the whole security issue depends on understanding that with a knowledge base, we can develop a scenario for the next 10 years of where we might be if we continue with business as usual. The gross absence of focus on education and access to information or mutually intelligible knowledge brings me to the point that I wanted to discuss with the university, and that is interdisciplinary and intercollegiate research and development, which I think are key. In many global tables of GERD, gross expenditure on R&D, the Middle East does not even appear. So we're a black hole region in that sense as well. A region which, as I said, has spent over, forgive me, I said billion, $8 trillion according to the Strategic Foresight Group between 2001 and 2003, $8 trillion, in which there have been opportunities lost to the value of $12 trillion. We could have improved the per capita income of everybody, Israeli, Iraqi, Turk, whoever it was. At the same time, according to the UNESCO Science Report 2010, China, EU, Japan, Russian Federation, and the US represent only a third of the world's population, but together they have 3/4 of the world's researchers and spend 3/4 of total world expenditure on R&D. So I don't know what the 7th billionth baby, the 7 billionth baby is, who was announced today, is going to look forward to, but I would think on this bleak reality, not very much. I would emphasize the importance of youth by saying that youth represent a commitment to overriding goals. The common denominator between the Jasmine Revolution and Iraq fascinated me when we had eyewitness participation in the WANA Forum, the West Asia North Africa Forum. The medical doctor who stood up after the Tahrir Square, 17 days of hell in Tahrir Square, treated everybody without discrimination. She had around her neck a cross and a crescent. And she said, I am basically an Egyptian patriot. And I hope this will be understood as I visit the Coptic church tomorrow, that I just want to pay my respects once again to the fact that I am an Arab. And in that context, I believe that a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim should be recognized in terms of their shared heritage and their shared thought, expressed in the Arabic language. We had a big problem over this issue in Cambridge University last year when we had Jews of Arab culture meeting for 2 days, and we were immediately attacked by right-wing voices, not only in the Arab world, but also in Israel, who said, well, this is going to be a political exercise. Believe it or not, the commitment to Arabic language was an extremely exciting contrast to the fact that with the e-culture, we're actually losing much of the poignancy of the language we speak. So in terms of recent tech meetings, I am delighted to be twittering along with the best of them, or the worst of them. The word Twitter belongs to the Arabic language, we think. For those of you who saw my great what was it, my fat Greek wedding, that wonderful story, he said everything is Greek, if you recall. I don't have my Windolene with me, but I just want to say that I think everything is Arabic of origin, including Twitter, which comes from tawattur, but the fact is that today, though, thought travels faster than Pegasus, but what is important is that it still takes 9 months, forgive me, to deliver a baby, as Fred Halliday used to say. So not everything is speed. The limitations of the new wave should not be many, but I think what is important is that the new wave of Arab youth are borderless. They can have online conversations. They are so far, I think, offsetting the region's political, religious, social, and cultural balkanization. However, if the agendas of the region end up getting mixed up with the agendas of confrontation, the war on terror, for example, then it may be that those very same authoritarian leaders who found their support in upping the expenditure on weapons and security services will focus on cracking down again on free expression. And this is what I find so worrying. I go back to the Somoza era, when people used to say, well, he may be a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. So I think that we have to line up the sons of bitches and see how many of them are expendable, and maybe give some support to our region developing a social charter calling for real change, a social cohesion fund, doing something about poverty rather than just bellyaching about it. And I would suggest that in terms of localized grievances and the social contract breaking down, this can only be addressed in terms of moving to a real Maghreb cooperation, a real GCC cooperation with the hinterland countries. The idea of a club of monarchs shelling out large sums of money to placate and appease is in and of itself not a viable alternative to the empowerment of people to stand up and be counted as citizens in a so-called globalizing world. There is no such thing as global civil society, but I think there is certainly a time where we can do a little better than be marginalized further. In conclusion, I just would quote some Shakespeare to you, and that is, there is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyages of their life is bound, the voyage is bound in shallows and miseries. On such a full sea, we are now afloat. I thank you for your patience and look forward to your questions.